Good afternoon and welcome to the Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee, the 1st of December 2021, committee number 11 of 2021. I note that all committee members are in attendance. There's no apologies. Anyone have any declarations of interest to raise in matters on the agenda today? No. So if we move to the first item on the agenda, which is the Ipswich Central state-owned assets, and that's the report concerning state-owned assets within the Ipswich Central precinct in the vicinity of Bell Street, the report that I called for during last committee. So could I have the relevant council officer to come forward, please? Could you please state your name?
Greg Thomas, Project Manager, Infrastructure Environment Department.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas, and thank you for putting together this report, which is a bit of a summary, a snapshot of, I guess, the asset owners that we are dealing with on and around our precinct here. So could you give us a bit of a brief summary on what that looks like, please, and, and some of the challenges we face?
Okay, the report that was provided had a schematic which showed the various state assets. I did confine the report to the state assets within the Bell Street precinct, but also within the close proximity to the Nicholas Street precinct. So in other words, there's a discussion point about an option over some land in Ellenborough Street as part of that process. So I guess the big issue, I guess, for me as part of the redevelopment is the overbridge. Mm-hmm. There's been long-term discussions with the state, between state and council on that asset. Largely, in summary, the state's happy for it to stay as it is. And it does impact the developability of Metro A, where it impacts that site in terms of what we would be able to do, where it joins into our existing asset there. So there are plenty of benefits, both aesthetically and from a development perspective, for the ultimate disposal of that asset.
They have given their consent for the removal of that, though. Should that?
The correspondence indicates that they would be happy for council to fund its demolition, I guess would be the way I would say it.
Okay.
And its painting as well at our expense if we wanted to do that. They would give us a licence for access. So that's pretty much where we are with the overbridge. With the awning, the state gave us a couple of options. This is the awning over the pedestrian crossing that links directly between the train station and the new entrance into Metro B as part of the redevelopment. The state gave us three options. One was to acquire the asset. Another one was to get a licence to utilise the asset. And by that I mean run some lighting for the pedestrian crossing from that asset. And the other one was to remove our infrastructure, that's the four lights, completely. So we indicated to the state that we didn't think acquiring that asset was a sound judgment. We did an independent asset condition report of that asset and found that in the short to medium term, some substantial money would need to be spent on that to bring it up to state. And so the goal that we have at the moment is to remove the lights and install some street-based lighting on the existing traffic light poles that are at the pedestrian crossing to provide the lighting to that crossing to the train station. So that would then negate any need for us to have a licence with the state on that asset.
Okay.
So just yesterday I met with IED about the funding for that lighting, which is not substantial.
Okay.
Yep.
Does anybody else have any questions? Thank you.
So I just wanted to just raise the issue
Sure.
about, if I may, about the option over Ellenborough Street. So if you just if you can just picture from that map roughly where that is. So the option is for a volumetric title. So what that means is about the holding of land above the parcel of land. That's a little bit like what we have over part of the land over Ellenborough Street. So at the time when council purchased the original Ellenborough Street land, there was, I guess, a level of uncertainty as to what would happen with the future Performing Arts Centre, about how much land they would need, what connectivity issues would need to be managed. So council made the decision, part of council made the decision to acquire an option over that land. That option comes to a completion shortly. There's an opportunity for us to actually extend that option over that portion of land that you see in that schematic, that would provide us with additional options down the track to provide connectivity into whatever council decides to do with the land off Ellenborough Street. So for example, let's say if we did build a Performing Arts Centre on that site, we could connect directly from the Bottle Alley or the back of the Eats building into that parcel of land, or create a pedestrian overpass, or perhaps a large plaza or something like that off the back of the Performing Arts Centre covering that land. So the ability to have that option over the land provides council with great flexibility for its future planning. So it doesn't really commit us to anything, it's just an option over that land. So in the conclusion, I must say I omitted to put in that point that the suggestion would be that we pursue an option over that land, or an extension to that option, sorry.
Thank you. That was going to be my question. Are we going to pursue the option or the
Well,
extension?
that's the
Obviously-
suggestion or the recommendation that would make sense for council to have that flexibility going forward. It doesn't mean we would buy it. It just gives us an option to assist in our future thinking about the solutions for that site.
So are you wanting that to be dealt with today, or it will be something that comes to council in the future, a formal approval?
Well, so there'll be a process to commence that discussions with the state. Then the state will have expectations about conditions on that option,
Yeah.
and also, I guess, a price as well. So those negotiations have to take place. So following this meeting, I'll just give the go-ahead to commence those discussions. So it's just preliminary discussions to, I guess, negotiate an outcome at the moment.
Okay. Mayor?
I was going to ask, do you know if the cost is, or we don't know because we
No,
haven't had the discussions?
We don't know. So initial indications were from QR that they would possibly be considering about a cost to that option, but no quantification on that number.
Can you just provide a bit more clarity on the subject area for the potential option extension, the volumetric area that you're talking about, or space that you're talking about? In practical terms, what does that look like? Is that potentially a walkway?
No. So if you look on the schematic, so the option would be on the land above that shape. Yep.
Yes,
So
that's
it's
right,
almost
but what
like-
would that look like from a building point of view?
So the state would have expectations around height. So I understand that over our lines they've changed the requirements of height above the line. So for example, I think it's 5.7 metres above the line is what Metro B is currently above in terms of the tunnel height. So I think it's gone up to 7 something. So they'll have expectations about that. So if you can imagine, at whatever height they set, a horizontal plane in the shape of that parcel on that map that allows you to build, that would allow you in the future, if it converts from an option to a purchase, to build above that site.
Yes, I'm just, sorry, I'm just trying to get clear on what that building might entail. Would it be an open air walkway potentially
Yep.
to the property that we own there along
Yeah,
Ellenborough
so
Street?
we gave some examples. So it could be a pedestrian link, an extension of Bottle Alley over the rail corridor, or just a generic plaza that connects. In Brisbane they build some buildings over the top as
Milton,
well. So
yeah,
could be anything.
Okay.
Yep.
So it could be multi-storey potentially.
It could be if the state allowed that, but the first step would be about, getting a sign off on an option.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Okay, thank you. No further questions? No? Could I have somebody move, please, noting the recommendation is that the report on the state-owned assets within the Ipswich Central Precinct be received and the contents noted. Thank you, Mayor Harding, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. Now open up for discussion.
Thank you for commissioning this. I think this weekend when we were out on Sunday morning out at the Bell Street clean-up, there's a lot of discussion about asset owners, and certainly the view I had from a lot of people, they didn't realise how many of the assets there were state-owned, so I think it's really good. And even until I got this report, I didn't know about the ramp. The others I knew about, but that's certainly that Bremer Street ramps. I didn't realise that we lease that from the state and pay $20,000 a year
Yeah,
for that privilege.
no.
So I think it's been really insightful to see the age when it was built, the condition, the impact it's having now. And I think as our CBD revitalisation comes to fruition, obviously we need to take all stakeholders on that journey to improve the overall. As soon as you step out of the Ipswich train station, it needs to look a lot better. So I think it's a really
Absolutely.
great education piece on what's there, and I guess we can start having that discussion about what we can do.
Yeah, and thank you, Mayor. We will hopefully move forward in creating a working group with all the relevant stakeholders to come to the table and talk about all of these individual assets and certainly what we can do to improve the overall, amenity. And just interesting in the risk management implications, something is identified, and that being public perceptions of state assets not adequately maintained. And when we think about all the discussion, I guess, in the community about Bell Street, there has been quite a bit of commentary that, council should be looking after and cleaning it itself. So there wasn't a great awareness or understanding that a lot of those assets just aren't owned by council. So it is very difficult to step in and maintain them or manage them.
I'd say the bulk of the assets that are being criticised are not council assets.
They absolutely. But yes, I'm grateful that council officers are working really hard on this piece of work, and we'll put together some kind of a working group, so relevant stakeholders. And it's not just about cleaning up or fixing assets, but there'll be some great discussions potentially. There might be, new opportunities within the Nicholas Street precinct for leasing, for relocation.
And Chair, I know earlier this year the state government were looking to sell the Ipswich Transit Centre. I haven't heard anything else about that.
I haven't heard anything further,
Okay.
Mayor. I'm not sure if the CEO is able to comment. No?
I don't have any further update. No, shaking of heads from the audience as well. Happy to
I'll ask the
follow up though and get an update. Chair?
Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing further, sorry,
guess if I
Mayor?
could, I know you've talked about it, Chair, but the pedestrian overbridge, the one that says,
The
it's all
walkway to
happening in the
nowhere.
that's all. Just also, apart from the visual side and the fact that it's not being used, but the impact it's having on us in developing Nicholas Street Precinct as well, and taking up areas in the Metro A area is also something that we need to take very seriously as well.
Absolutely, and that's certainly something I've been highlighting in all of my discussions with various stakeholders. We've had fantastic ideas come in from the community about a vertical garden, a mural, and they are all wonderful ideas, but the first preference is for that asset to be removed. So we'll keep working away, chipping away at that one.
Agree.
If there's nothing more, we'll put the matter to the vote. All those in favour? Noting that's unanimous and carried. Moving on to item number 2, which is the confirmation of minutes of the Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee number 10, 2021. dated the 4th of November 2021. And the recommendation is that the minutes of that committee be confirmed. I do note that that is subject to an amendment. And that amendment is to item 2, titled Ipswich Central Revitalisation, Positioning Framework and Place Plans, as follows. The attachments 1, 2 and 3 of item 2, titled Ipswich Central Revitalisation, Positioning Framework and Place Plans of the Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee, number 10 of 2021, held on the 4th of November 2021, be replaced with updated maps that more closely align with IGO, Active Transport Action Plan. I will move that. Could I have a seconder? Thank you, Mayor Harding. Open up for discussion. I think the amendment is self-explanatory.
That the maps
Okay.
are much better?
Yeah, so we'll put the matter to the vote then. All those in favour? Noting that's unanimous and carried. Moving on to item number 3, which is the procurement reimagining Bottle Alley expression of interest, and it's a report concerning the proposed expression of interest for the procurement of a local experienced artist, muralist, designer and creative or consortium of artists and designers to design and deliver the public art concept for Bottle Alley. Could I call on the relevant council officer to come forward, please?
Good afternoon, Chair, Mayor and Councillors. Kat Matson, Manager, Economic and Community Development.
Thank you, Ms Matson. This is an exciting piece of work, breathing new life, fresh air into our beloved Bottle Alley. Please tell us more.
It is an exciting project. And after a lot of conversation about the best path forward for reinvigorating this particular piece of asset, this popular thoroughfare that we actually understand has been used as a laneway since 1864, it's been determined that the best way to establish a new piece of public art at the same time as engaging our local artists as well as outside of region artists to give us the best piece of public art is to go down the path of an expression of interest first. Now, expression of interest enables us to elicit a number of different responses from the community with a level of, I'm going to say, professionalism to the public art standard, as well as provide us with an opportunity for collaboration. Because, you know, you can imagine a scenario where we bring a number of people together, we have a briefing session, and there is somebody who suggests a mural that could be then augmented by somebody else's suggestion of lighting, and then somebody else's, again, suggestion of wayfinding implementation. So the expression of interest process is really important to us because it means that we can gather a number of different ideas. The procurement part that sits behind it, though, also ensures that we are establishing a piece of public art for this very valuable asset in our community, as distinct to street art or community art, which we can see in other places. This piece of this thoroughfare that leads off now the newly developed Nicholas Street precinct needs to have a certain standard. So we're pretty excited about them.
Okay, and I guess my question is going to be around ensuring we achieve the standard you've just referred to, as well as working closely with our Nicholas Street precinct leasing team, noting some feedback from prospective tenants, particularly in the Eats venue, you know, around the look and feel that they would expect when they're investing a lot of money in opening up a new shop. So how do you see the two working together, and the vision for Bottle Alley, would that incorporate some wayfinding signage?
So the vision for Bottle Alley that has been, the supporting documentation that will be attached to this expression of interest request, this expression of interest documentation, is the Bottle Alley history as well as a general artistic direction of what it is that we're looking for. We're looking to celebrate and acknowledge the history of Ipswich. In terms of establishing that standard, the assessment panel consists of members of the Nicholas Street team, as well as art gallery representatives, as well as community representatives who have experience in public art, as well as the Economic Development and Creative Industries Development Officer team. So all key stakeholders that are thinking about the aesthetic appeal, the economic impact, the social impact, the promotion of council's arts and creative aspirations and strategic direction, recognition of the work that we're doing to nurture our local talent, as well as the aspirations that we have for local talent. So all of that comes together in the assessment process, as well as in that expression of interest process to start with, where we're actually facilitating conversations.
Okay, fantastic. Anyone else have any questions?
Yes, Ms Matson, we're very excited, as you know, we're very excited about this, about Bottle Alley. Do you mind just taking the time to explain the difference between community art, public art and street art?
Yeah, best way to describe that is if you imagine some different art installations. So as you drive around different cities, you might see signal boxes that have been painted by school groups, by community groups. They'll have a particular theme and they are community art projects. And you can see that they are of a artistic calibre that's not necessarily professional, but they are gorgeous. They add to the aesthetic of the community and they reflect the local community. Street art can be, well, the installations and the artefacts that we saw as a result of Brisbane Street Art Festival. You know, some of our large-scale murals that have a grit and a street art vibe about them. And then we've got public art. And the best example right now of public art is the statue that we have in front of this building that was developed by Lincoln Austin. You know, there is a professional nature about it. It's of a higher ilk, both in terms of, artistic design and aesthetic, as well as implementation. So, yes, art is subjective. There is no doubt about that. And it's very clear that such a significant thoroughfare that is Bottle Alley, that connects Nicholas Street Precinct with Ellenborough Street, that needs to be a public art standard that meets the requirements of the tenants, but also reflects Ipswich's history.
And in discussions about street art and community art, I know that often is talked about that it's not permanent, it's there for 3 to 5 years. Is it the same with this piece here? Would that be seen to be a permanent piece, or?
I'm going to say that depends.
Yep.
I would, by sheer nature of the canvas that it's painted on, it's exposed to the elements. It might be undercover, but it's not by any means going to be permanent because it will be affected by rain, by weather, whatnot. Whether it is as impermanent or as temporary as perhaps community art or street art, that I think will be a decision for council to make as the piece of art ages. I don't believe, and I don't believe that we've written into the procurement an impermanence piece. However, it will be understood that this is a piece of public art that may get replaced in a period of time.
Certainly the feedback I've had from the creative communities that they want things that do change every, whether it's 3, 5, 10 years, to have that option to, I guess, to embrace other creatives in the community.
Well, and it will need to reflect the different, the changing nature of the precinct, won't it? You know, there might be different tenants, or there might be different vibes the city will change. So yes, it will. It's certainly not a permanent installation. Councillor Kunzelman.
Just given some of the outcry when the previous thing was painted over, I wondered if we needed to make a statement in the expression of interest request about impermanence.
Impermanence?
And I had another question.
I'm very happy to take that on notice, Councillor, and I will check the paperwork and check the submission, and perhaps we will build in a piece around at least something that there is no commitment that it's permanent. So let me figure out how to best do that.
Yes, as long as people understand it's not going to be there forever and that there will be change. My second question was, does it have to be history?
It doesn't have to be.
I'm not being provocative.
No. And
Be provocative, yes.
And
I'm just thinking that the art could display the vibrance of Ipswich now and all the many offerings that will be available in that area.
I think there's so much to say on that. In designing the expression of interest, we need to provide some artistic direction. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible for us to make a decision, given that art is subjective, on which are better options. And so the artistic direction that was selected was celebrating the lost buildings of Ipswich. That doesn't mean, though, that it is exclusively a history piece. And in fact, one of the things that I'm quite looking forward to is seeing the expressions of interest that could be quite celebratory, where there is a reflection of, well, this is where we've come from, but this is where we're going, perhaps.
And it may be a modern interpretation.
Absolutely.
And, you know, depicting the history, the true history of Bottle Alley.
Yeah. So does it have to be? Totally take on your point. My inkling would be that it won't be a historical piece, it will be more acknowledging the past as we move into the future. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out. And the other thing that an expression of interest does too is that it actually means that we can help shape the ideas. So it is far more of a consultative process, where if we'd gone down a traditional procurement process, just a request for tender, we would have been stuck with choosing in isolation between multiple options, which wouldn't have given that level of consultation.
So you believe you'll be able to influence the expressions of interest?
Be able to influence the direction, the creative direction, along with
That's
the
what I meant,
assessment panel. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms Matson. Thank you. Now open up for discussion. Oh, sorry. Can I ask for a mover, please? Thank you, Mayor Harding, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Milligan. Open up for discussion.
I'm very excited about this, I think, as we all are. I like the fact that there's an expression of interest. I know it's an extra step, but it does mean that people can respond to it at a less cost, and they don't have to do full works. So it's I think, better for the artists. It's an easier process for them to do. And noting the passion that people hold for Bottle Alley, it's going to be really important that we get it right. So to be involved will be really important, I think, wonderful. To me, when it comes to, if I go to the chair, to Councillor Kunzma, I think we sort of had that vision of Nicholas Street Precinct tapping into the history and the historic part of our, being the oldest provincial city in Queensland, tapping into that has been a bit of a theme that we've had, the Nicholas Street Precinct. So I think it'd be really good to see a modern take on that, or contemporary take.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My understanding of the brief and where that was headed was based on feedback from the community, a lot of disappointment about the historical buildings that we've lost in Ipswich, and some, I guess, questions and a little bit of criticism about the very new look of our building here. So there's an absolute desire to inject as much heritage or nod to our heritage as possible. So I know council officers are still working on incorporating the old Nicholas Street rail bridge bollards throughout the precinct here, and the piece of art is just another addition to that. So yes, I do love when old meets new and the two collide. It's very exciting to watch it unfold. Thank you, Councillor Kunzman.
As a personal opinion, I think it would be very limited and a lack of imagination to simply reproduce the Reeds building or whatever. That's all. That's a personal opinion.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. Yes, I think they have a tough audience and critics when they lodge their expressions of interest. So it will be interesting to see which piece prevails.
And if I may, I'd just like to thank also, there is a confidential document that the council will be given, which is the strategy and tender evaluation plan. So it's great to see that, seeing this being good to go.
Yes, the governance around this was very important to myself and the officers involved. So good job. Thank you. We might put the matter to the vote. All those in favour? Noting that's unanimous and carried. Moving on to item number 4, which is the Ipswich Central Facade Improvement Program for 2021, and the report providing an update on the facade improvement program for the 21-22 period. Could I call on the relevant council officer to come forward, please?
Hello again, Kat Matson, Manager of Economic and Community Development.
Thank you, Ms Matson. Can you please give us an update on how round 2 has fared?
Round 2 has fared so well, so well. I think this is possibly one of the most exciting programs that we've rolled out in the Ipswich Central revitalisation efforts this year in economic development. And the reason it's so exciting is because what round 2 of the facade improvement program has done is unearthed a genuine hunger to invest in the buildings, to restore them back to their heritage character, and to not just do some small lick of paints improvement, but to actually take the opportunity of the facade improvement program to do some fundamental changes that will change the landscape and dramatically improve the streetscapes of Ipswich Central. In particular, a couple of key numbers that I want to call out. For every $1 that council is investing in this round of facade improvement program, private investors are contributing $2.40. So when you consider the fact that we're giving a total of $130,000 this year, that means that there's going to be a total of $446,563 invested in Ipswich Central facade improvement. And what the facade improvement program then does is a bit similar to the Working Bee on the weekend in Bell Street. When people walk down the street and they feel like the buildings are sparkling, they feel like there is character, grit and substance in the buildings, they linger longer. They pop into the shops. They go, oh, what's in here? What interesting little shop do we have here? There's a sense then after they've had their coffee or their lunch or they've popped into a couple of dress shops that they say, that was really lovely, let's go back. So that visitor positivity then also drives investor positivity because they want to be part of that. They want to be part of something that is different, something that is unique, something that isn't replicated in other cities. There is a very unique, you can't say very unique, something is unique. There is a unique experience that is genuinely Ipswich as distinct to another region. The other thing that I wanted to call out too is that of this round's applications, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all within the same block. So when the assessment panel were reviewing the oversubscription, we had limited funds, we had to make some decisions around, well, not only is the nature of the application going to add to the street appeal, but also what is the impact of doing a cluster of facade improvements in one block. So in coming months, there is a strip of Brisbane Street that is going to literally change before our eyes, which is going to have a massive impact, not just on the existing businesses, but also on incoming businesses as more investor confidence and interest is generated in the area.
And it wouldn't be incorrect to say that the strip that you're talking about is probably, honestly not the most pleasing part of Ipswich and often an area associated with antisocial behaviour. So,
so that strip from Ellenborough Street down to Subway is going to change before our eyes over the coming months, and in beautiful ways, where the buildings are restored to heritage character. They've already been heavily involved in discussions with our heritage team to understand the right colour of paint, what kind of paint, what shape of balconies. Like it's very, very exciting, including some other projects that potentially will see walkways through to Limestone Street. So we actually start interacting and connecting other precincts. No, I've lost what I was going to say there, so I'll leave it at that.
okay. Was it oversubscribed?
Yes. Yes, well and truly oversubscribed. So sadly, we needed to say no to 3 applicants. Actually, we said no to 4 applicants, 1 because it was ineligible, 3 just because we were so oversubscribed. As it was, we did manage to find another $30,000 in CCED budget to fund 2 oversubscribed or over budget amounts, purely because of that scale impact that I was just talking about. These projects all within that same block. We could see the potential of, if all of those projects happen at once, there is a massive uplift to that precinct.
Any further questions for Ms Matson? Thank you, Mayor.
Obviously, I've been contacted. It's a wonderful program. It's delighted to see this being so subscribed. I've been contacted by one of the companies that wasn't successful and was quite keen on it. And what was really lovely to hear from them is the fact that they heard about it because council officers went and door knocked and talked to them and encouraged them to do it. They weren't aware they didn't know it was a competitive round. So I guess it'd be lovely to follow up with those ones who are unsuccessful and support them and help them. And I think I appreciate the business that they're in. Some of the suggestions of putting stock outside isn't going to work for them.
Yeah, so every applicant was very closely concierged with a strong customer experience focus right up to application, and then in the post notification period, whether they were successful or unsuccessful. Every business that was unsuccessful has received phone calls.
Yes.
Whether they've taken those phone calls
Yes, they
isn't always the case, and we are very encouraging of them to apply again next time with our support.
Thank you.
It's disappointing that they weren't aware that it's a competitive round, and maybe we should put that as number 1 in terms and conditions and guidelines. Pretty much all council funding is going to be competitive, I think,
I think all 3 levels of government.
all 3 levels of funding programs are going to be competitive, and sadly there will always be people that we can't say yes to.
No, thank you. Yes, they did report that council did speak to them and talk them through it. So thank you for that support for them when they apply again next time.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ms Matson.
thank you.
Could I have somebody move? Thank you, Mayor Harding. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. Now open up for discussion.
I'd just like to add, through you, Chair, the perception, the increased and positive perception that this carries for Ipswich as a city, as a whole, as a region. Basically adding on from what Ms Madsen was inferring to, and, you know, visitors that are coming and see that fresh facade, and then, you know, people having an increased pride in where they live. Like, it is something that can't be measured, but it is so important.
Absolutely.
And so it's really hard to put a number on that as well, that intangible difference that these type of programs make. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. And this is one of many immeasurable factors, I guess, that have such a positive place within our whole revitalisation and the Nicholas Street precinct. But if I can just point to some commentary, I think, made by yourself earlier in your economic development committee about vacancy rates with commercial properties here in Ipswich. You know, isn't this fantastic that our buildings are being, you know, redeveloped, improved, and of course there's demand for them as well. So it's just positive news all round for Ipswich. I'm very excited. And I think the other important thing to point out, my understanding is that there's a lot of local builders and tradies involved in doing these renovations under the facade improvement program. So win-win for everyone. Okay. Nothing further. We'll put the matter to the vote. All those in favour? It's unanimous and carried. Brings us to item number 5, which is the Nicholas Street Precinct Communications, Engagement and Events Report for November 2021. Can I call the relevant council officer to come forward, please? you please state your name and title?
Good afternoon, Chair, Mayor and Councillors. James Hepburn, I'm Chair of the Retail Sub-Project Steering Committee.
Thank you. Can you talk us through some of the more notable events that we've had going on in the
Yes.
precinct?
Yes, of course. Over the last month, we've had the regular slots of the handmade markets and the Twilight Evening Festival. Both went off quite successfully. Some were, I think, handmades was had to cut short because of weather affected. There's a bit of wind and inclement weather, which is a bit of a problem there. We also have a new event that took place, which was the Garden Fair, and that was hugely successful. It was a trial. A point of difference to probably some other markets that have happened here and certainly locally and regionally speaking. And it went off at such a level that we've already booked them in for a slot next year and looking at seeing if we can do 2 a year for the time being.
Okay. I guess with one of the biggest events coming up, possibly for Nicholas Street Precinct, is the lighting of the Christmas tree, and it coincides with the markets. So we're probably maybe going to see our biggest numbers yet, fingers crossed. How ready are we to manage a crowd like that? From an operational point of view, security, lights?
Yeah, the team has been working tirelessly on the Twilight and St Nicholas Street, essentially a lead up of events to Christmas. And I think we're quite well practiced now in terms of the operations, security. There's been a lot to do with and learn through the COVID check-in pieces. So yes, the team is very much ready for festivities to take place over the coming month.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask for somebody to move this report, please? Thank you, Councillor John Eck, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. Now open up for discussion. Thank you, Mayor.
If I may, Chair, I think it was just a good summary of a lot of things that are happening in the precinct since we, really opened up this building at the end of June and the library and so on. Interesting, the car park. We're averaging over 20,000 visitors per month, which is really interesting. It's great to see those numbers up there. I guess for anyone who's looking to lease somewhere that's modern and exciting and vibrant, I mean, we've got the numbers here to show that despite COVID that we do have a lot of people coming here. That's not including people coming from public transport.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you're going to touch on the award.
Yes. So we've had a couple of awards here, and more recently, the Toolman Place and Ipswich Library were announced winners of the 2021 Urban Design Institute of Australia Queensland Award for Excellence in Social and Community Infrastructure. It was awarded for architectural merit, community facilities, execution and finishes. And the judges highlighted Ipswich City Council's vision to transform this key location in the city's CBD as proving catalytic. So that's just an amazing achievement, and was so proud for the organisation and for council officers, and just so proud of the asset that we have here.
It's a huge award. It's a huge industry award. We're competing against the private sector as well and industry. So it's a phenomenal award.
Just to add that, yeah, I'm just so happy that, our team can be recognised for what it's such an achievement. Everyone was under the pump. Something that it was right that they mentioned that it was a catalyst project, I guess, and it was out of a lot of people's comfort zones, I think, and there's a lot of risk there, but the proof is in the pudding, and it's nice to have that being recognised by the UDA.
From an industry body, from professionals, that we're absolutely headed in the right direction, and it's an enormous undertaking here. And the use of the word catalytic is just so on point, because there's just so much at stake here for the entire city of Ipswich to resurrect our CBD, to restore some pride. So yes, I agree. Very, very exciting. There's nothing further. We will put the matter to the vote. All those in favour? Noting that's unanimous and carried. Moving on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is the Nicholas Street Precinct Retail Subcommittee Steering Committee, November 2021. It's a report concerning the November 21 report from the Steering Committee on the status of the leasing program and associated developments with the retail component of the Nicholas Street Precinct redevelopment. Could I call on the relevant council officer, please? Thank you again, Mr Hepburn. Could you please give us an update on the status of the leasing? What's in the pipeline? How many are in the pipeline? How many are nearing execution?
Yes, of course. So we've had a really good month in this space. I think the market has woken up post-COVID. I think fingers crossed Omicron, whatever it's called, doesn't come back and bite us in the neck next month, next year. But the legal team have been very, very busy. Since we reported, we had 15 heads of terms signed in a non-legally binding status, of which 12 of those had legal documents already issued. We mentioned this time last month, I think, that we had executed an agreement for lease with that dumpling place, who have been undertaking their fit-outs. A little bit disappointed to announce that they're going to miss their opening date of essentially around about now and early this year before Christmas. They've struggled to get materials, and they've also struggled to hire staff leading into Christmas, which is just generally a sign of the market at the moment within the leisure and restaurant world. Although we're pretty comfortable with where they're tracking on the actual fit-out works now, and we're looking forward to agreeing a new date for their opening in the new year. And with regards to some of the other deals coming forwards, only just the end of last week we executed our second agreement for lease. That will find its way to a special council meeting, I believe, in mid-December, which is great news. That is a kiosk unit within the Metro B building. It faces the Eats. I can't give their name just yet. What I can say is they sell a level of gelato, desserts, milkshakes, that sort of thing. Okay. So a very exciting national brand to hopefully to announce in the not so distant future.
And sorry, just so we're clear on the position of that, if we're standing at the front of Council's building here in Tormal Place and you start heading up Nicholas Street, that would be on the left?
There are 2 kiosks at the entrance of Metro B that face Eats, and they are directly another party in Eats and another party in Metro B. So things are really moving within that side of things. Perhaps if I preempt an inevitable question around the cinema, if I may.
How did you know?
We've got some pretty good news and pretty exciting news on its way, and the procurement team will bring forward a paper. I'm not sure if a date has been quite finalised, but it will certainly be before the end of the year in recommending the council to select a preferred cinema operator. So that's pretty significant for us as a team, certainly for the rest of the leasing going forwards and confidence within the market. So I look forward to that coming forwards.
When do you expect councillors to be given the detail of that?
There is a draft report that's being circulated within the procurement team and the officer level at the moment, and it will have all the detail in. So I can't imagine it'll be too long.
Thank
I
you.
must admit, I don't know the exact timings on it.
Any other questions for Mr Hepburn? No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Could I ask for somebody to move? Thank you, Councillor Milligan, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Jonick. Now open up for discussion. No?
I note that we have a special meeting next Thursday, I think.
Yes, and look, I'm like everyone. I'm looking forward to when we're in a position to announce the tenants that we have in place downstairs. It's getting very, very exciting, and everyone has been very patient. And I do understand you know, the concern in the community that, you know, they're really hoping for businesses and food outlets to open sooner rather than later. But just want to emphasise the team has been working really, really hard in the landscape of COVID, which has just decimated retail and food outlets, as we all know. So they've done a great job, and looking forward to early in the new year when we can make several announcements at once. If there's nothing further, I'll put the matter to the vote. All those in favour? Noting that's unanimous and carried. Thank you. We have no notices of motion. Matters arising, nil. And I think that brings us to the end. And I will close the meeting at 1:18. Thank you.